we have George, who's Deputy Head of Market Infrastructure and Development Division at the ECB. So I want to bring in George and let him dive into the topic of T+1. So George, over to you. Thank you.
Morning, Eileen. Thank you very much. Am I audible and visible?
You are indeed.
Thank you. So the idea is to indeed provide you an update on a topic that we assume that occupies quite a bit of your bandwidth in your institutions these days. It's the move to T+1, formally announced by the Commission and the EU public authorities last year. Just to clarify upfront, the focus here is from the ECB perspective, and I would say a specific ECB role, which is as operators of the target services and as responsible for the evolution of target services. There are different also roles in the ECB from an oversight policy or supervision perspective, which we do not cover today. So a bit of background, some of it may be known to most of you, but perhaps always good to be on the stable base. This is a policy project, first of all, and the idea is that by shortening the settlement cycle, there is also the idea to manage better the so-called market and counterparty risk, basically by shortening the gap between the moment of trading to the moment of settlement. Europe is in the T+2 framework today, and the idea is to move to T+1. A bit of history, just to recap, EU was quite in the forefront of all these discussions and implementations, because back in 2014, there was a move from, I would say, non-harmonized settlement cycles in Europe to the T+2. The ECB and the T2S, the Target Securities project at that time, was a catalyst to move to T+2. The idea was you bring all these jurisdictions in a single platform. It makes sense to have a single settlement cycle for managing corporate actions and other activities. In the meantime, the US has, I would say, moved ahead of us and moved to T+1 last year. And the challenge we are facing today is that in a multifaceted, multi-jurisdictional environment of Europe, also in collaboration with Switzerland and the UK, we try to bring all these markets to T+1 by October 2027. This is the deadline that was announced last year by the European Commission. So moving a bit, deep diving a bit into the organization in Europe and in the Euro system, there has been the establishment of, I would say, the coordination layer of public authorities, the ECB, the Commission, ESMA is part of this coordination committee. But there's a lot of activity in the private sector in Europe. There is the EU T+1 industry committee that is coordinating the efforts in the market. And there is a multiplicity of work streams. I will not name all of them today. I think there's 7 or 8 of them looking at various aspects of the financial transaction life cycle, trading, clearing, settlement, securities financing transactions. And there is also a dedicated work stream on the operational timeline, which is, I would say, the summary of all the activities into potentially what we are going to see as a market recommendation. There are close to 1,000 registered participants I've seen in these work streams. That's very encouraging and shows that there is a lot of engagement in the market. In parallel, the ECB and the T2S Target Securities, I would say, community within its own governance has created a dedicated task force back in January 2025, focusing on taking stock of the discussions that take place in the market, the EU public authorities reports of last year, and looking forward into what is feasible to adapt and change within T2S in the next 2 years. To be a bit more specific on the interaction and interplay between these two governances, so the EU market governance and the T2S governance, already at the beginning of the May, the ECB Market Infrastructure Board, the MIB, shared a contribution, is the right word, with the industry committee, looking at the perimeter of what is possible and feasible to adapt in T2S within the next 2 years in order to support the CSDs, their clients, and eventually the market moving to T+1. This contribution, it's currently taken into account by the European governance, and the expectation is that by the end of June, there will be market recommendations published, and some of them we expect to be relevant also for T2S. Perhaps two clarifications here. We understand that after June 2025, there will be follow-up with further market consultations on the European industry recommendations. And also the other side of the coin, we plan as of July this year to start what we call the change and release management process in T2S, in targeted securities, because October 27th may sound far in the future, but in terms of potentially introducing changes to T2S and to the CSDs and the clients connected to T2S, I would say this is already tomorrow. So this process is starting internally in the T2S governance in July. Moving ahead and perhaps deep diving into what these changes could look like, could go to the next slide. It's important to put up front what is a key objective. The key objective of any potential change to T2S is to maintain as a minimum, and if possible, improve the good settlement efficiency rates that we see today in the T2S environment. So the market is moving to T+1. There will be challenges in terms of managing all the activities in a shorter time gap. And the objective for us is to make sure that there is settlement efficiency in the T2S environment. When I say T2S, we're speaking about 24 jurisdictions in Europe, basically. When we looked into the perimeter of these changes, what is possible and feasible in the next 2 years, we took an approach that we have to do something, we have to adapt. So this is clear. And we already agreed that doing nothing is not an option because some adaptations in timelines will be needed, but also doing everything. Start changing all timelines of T2S and the interdependencies with the other target services in the whole market. It's also probably not possible, if not unrealistic. We also wanted to substantiate any changes based on data and evidence. We all know that this is desirable. Sometimes it's difficult, but I would say at least as a starting point, the status quo provides us with a lot of information. And we also acknowledge and recognize that nobody has a crystal ball and we don't know exactly how the market will behave in 2 or 3 years from now. So room for further adaptations in the future. The identified options that the MIB and the T2S governance has identified at this stage, and it's already shared with the industry committee, is that it's twofold, I would say. First, some adaptation on what we call the nighttime settlement cycles or sequences. We don't need to become too technical today on this. They will need to be adapted. As I said, the time gap between trading clearing a settlement is shortening in view of the move to T+1. And that means that what was, let's say, desirable and feasible today would need to be adapted. I will not go into exact times and during the night settlement, but I think we can say with certainty we need to extend and perhaps push back a little bit the settlement cycles and the nighttime settlement. In addition, we are also considering, subject to further analysis in the T2S governance, to enhance the optimization tools we use during the nighttime settlement, a typical one called partial settlement, and we try to see how we can make sure that this is available in all settlement sequences during the nighttime settlement. When I know already that the questions that will be coming, or the let's say occupying the market ecosystem these days, are more changes feasible and possible? I would say yes. We can always change the timelines in T2S, but we have to strike a balance of what we can assess, deploy, test, and make available in the next 2 years. In principle, I would say changing a timeline in target services per se is not a functional difficulty. The more challenging aspect is the potential impact of any critical deadlines, cutoff times, timelines may have in other target services, but also in the operations that all of you as settlement agents, treasurers, custody agents, you may be facing. So changes are possible beyond what I just mentioned, but the discussion will go on in parallel to the move to T+1, and we can always consider changes also after we go live. To conclude, and it's just a visual representation, if we go to the next slide, we are between, I would say, between May and June. The T2S governance has contributed its views to the EU governance. The ball is back to the market. We expect end of June the recommendations, and already from as of the summertime 2025, the machinery of the T2S change and release management process will be in place. We need to document, define, develop the changes, deploy them, test them, and we are rather confident that they will be in place approximately, I would say, Q2 2025 in view of being ready for October 2027. I hope I did not bombard too much, Eileen, with the T+1. I will pause here. I'm happy to take any questions or clarifications.
Excellent. Thank you, George. Lot of info here, and we're changing topics, so I can see also people are delayed on some of the questions. So we're having some questions pop in now again on the on our T2 topic at the beginning, on the non-bank topic. That maybe we should just pause 1 second, pause George 1 second, and then let George breathe. Because I also have a question for him, but then we could maybe bring Sylvain back and then just look at a few of these questions. Sylvain, again, I think we have answered most of them, but there are a few ones popping in. So I don't know if we need maybe just to clarify a little bit on the non-bank topic again. So if you're still with me, we have some of the questions on our participants. So now we're back to the non-banks in T2 topic. All right. So we're just everyone zoom back to where we started. Are those participants obliged to the minimums reserve? You spoke about that. Can you just remind the colleagues a little bit on that and a few other topics for me, Sylvain?
Yeah, the minimum reserve requirement is not linked so much to the the fact of holding an account in target services. It's more linked to the status and closely linked to the fact of being a monetary policy counterparty or not. So in principle, because of their status and their business, the non-banks are not subject to minimum reserve. That's why I have not covered it, because they are minimum reserve requirements. That's for credit institution in general.
Super, Sylvain. Also, we have a few questions about the relationship that you see between other clearing settlement mechanisms and T2. Do you want to say a bit on that?
Well, there were different questions indeed on, what are the possibilities for the non-banks to have an account with the CSM but not in TIPS, or to have an account in TIPS and in the CSM. I have a very easy answer to all these questions. There is no difference. If you look at what is possible and not possible, there is no difference between the way we treat credit institutions and non-banks. So whatever is possible today for non-banks, for banks remain possible tomorrow for non-banks, and what is not possible won't be possible either for non-banks. There is no difference in the way we treat them.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that might have covered most of them. I'm just scrolling through here because people are waking up on things. Did you spot anything else that you think we did not cover?
Well, there was also a question of, for instance, you are a non-bank, can you have an account in TIPS without having an account in T2? That's perfectly possible, the way it's already possible today with the banks. I'm not sure it's the best way to manage the liquidity, but that's another question. At least in terms of rules, that's something which would allow.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sylvain. So we're going to close non-banks for now. Thanks for being active out there. It's really good. We like this. Lots of content going on today. George, can I bring you back in? Because now you had 30 seconds. Because we also have a question on the move to T+1. And then will T2S then stop with the nighttime settlement already processing the next value day? Can you talk a little bit about that? What happens when we move into the T+1 compared to nighttime, daytime settlement?
Yes, no, it's a valid question, Eline. Thank you for that. So basically, today, the gap between trading and settlement, it's approximately 26 hours, let's say, for any security financing transactions or any preparations for settlement. And this indeed, as of October 27, will squeeze to a few hours, depending on the end time of the trading. So what we are considering, because at the moment there is no decision, but what we are considering is the nighttime settlement activity starts approximately 8:30 today and is complete by 10:30. We are thinking of pushing that back a bit later in the night so we can give a bit more breathing space to all CCPs, their clients, to prepare, I would say, the operations before instructing T2S. This is what we are looking at. Now, the question, what will happen if trading venues go later in the night, or if we go to 24/7, we hear on the other side of the Atlantic a lot of excitement about that. I would say we'll have to strike a balance. T2S and target services will always try to support the market, accommodate these changes, but the answer cannot be always let's squeeze and let's shrink the T2S settlement availability, let's say, ab infinitum. I think we mentioned, and Ulrich mentioned before, the survey and the interaction we are going to have with the market on 24/7 for all target services. If one day we go to continuous trading and settlement, I would say everything has to happen in parallel somehow. It will not be a cascade effect of, I don't know, going trading at 12 o'clock at midnight and then pushing T2S in the morning. We will not do that because it goes against, I would say, any safety regulatory requirements to have extended times of settlement availability. So the short answer is we will adapt gradually, a bit later in the night. If the market in the coming years moves to very wide open trading hours, we have to interact with the market, with our stakeholders, and find the right moment in time that your settlement instructions will need to come to T2S.
Thank you, George.